Insight Quarterly Magazine Issue 33 July to September 2024. Compiled and edited by Justin Phillips, Akanksha Verma. Transcribed and printed by Mitra Jyothi, in collaboration with Radio Udon. Subscription Rs 100 yearly. Mitra Jyothi Digital Library. Mitra Jyothi. CA Site Number, P22, 31st Main, 18th Cross, HSR Layout. Sector 1, behind NIFT College, Bangalore 560102. Phone, 08022258762 Email, mj.tblibrary@gmail.com. Website, www.mitrajyothi.org. Copyright Notice. This book is reproduced in accessible format for people with bona fide print disabilities by Mitra Jyothi, CA Site Number P22, 18th Cross, 31st Main, Sector 1, HSR Layout, behind NIFT College, Bangalore 560102. Phone No. 2258762 Country Code +91 Bengaluru Code 080. Email, mj.tblibrary@gmail.com. Website, www.mitrajyothi.org. This book is created for distribution for the print disabled only and in accordance with the Marrakesh Treaty ratified by India on July 24, 2014 and Section 52, 1, ZB, of the Copyright Act, 1957. This accessible format production of the original publication is permitted to be used only by persons with print disabilities. Any further reproduction, distribution to any person without a print disability or any commercial use of this book is strictly prohibited and will be subject to legal action. Content: 1. About Legendary Ratan Tata. 2. Out and About. 3. Peaceful Parent, Cheerful Child. 4. Love Hurts or Heals. 5. Ramadan and Bakrid. 6. Get Moving, Get Healthy. 7. Passenger to Pilot. 8. I Am Not Dying Today. 9. The Weirdest Island in the World. 10. Mitra Jyothi News July-September 2024. 11. Recipe. 12. Radio Udon's 8th Convention. An inclusive celebration in partnership with Mitra Jyothi. 13. Celebrating abilities. The importance of Divya Kala Melas. 1. Editorial, about Legendary Ratan Tata. Dear readers, Ratan Tata, the leader of the Tata Group, recently passed away into the hereafter. His legacy is unparalleled. Ratan Tata spearheaded the globalization of the Tata Group, acquiring iconic brands like Jaguar Land Rover and Tetley. He emphasized ethical business practices and corporate social responsibility. Through the Tata Trust, he championed various social causes including education, healthcare, and rural development. Tata companies contribute about 11% of India's GDP. His impact on Indian industry and society will continue to be felt for generations to come. May all of us be inspired to do our bit to make our nation better. On the other hand, the threat of war looms large in the Middle East, bringing uncertainty in our lives. Oil prices, tourist travel, and regional security have become volatile. Only peace can restore the trust that has been shattered. Readers can find articles about parenting, faith, exercising and other interesting stuff. As always, if you have articles or comments, please send them to us. Happy reading and enjoy the festivals of the year. Justin Phillips, Editor. 2. Out and About. Maria Brañas Moreira, the world's oldest known person, has died at the age of 117, her family announced yesterday. Born on March 4, 1907, in San Francisco, she moved to Catalonia, Spain, at age 8. Moreira witnessed major historical events, including 2 world wars and the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, and she became the oldest known survivor of COVID-19 at age 113. She was active on social media as Super Via Catalana, or Super Catalan Grandma, amassing nearly 19,000 followers. There are approximately 722,000 centenarians, those aged 100 and older globally, with 108,000 in the US. Supercentenarians, those aged 110 and older, are rare, with about 250 to 300 worldwide and roughly 60 to 70 known in the US. Moreira credited her longevity to enjoying nature, good company, avoiding toxic people, luck, and genetics. Some studies suggest the maximum human lifespan could be between 120 and 150 years. The oldest verified person to have ever lived died in 1997 at 122. The current oldest living person is now 116-year-old Tomiko Itoaka from Japan. A new seamount and 20 potentially new science species have been discovered off the coast of Chile during an expedition to map uncharted parts of the seafloor. Armed with their trusty ROV Sebastian, the clever folks over at Schmidt Ocean Institute were surveying the unnamed and unexplored seamount when they spotted two flying spaghetti monsters. Don't you just love the ocean? Known to science as Bathyphysa conifera, the flying spaghetti monster is a kind of siphonophore, making it a relative of the long stringy thing and one of our closest invertebrate relatives, the vagina salp. Other rare sightings included the first ever record of a Casper octopus in the southern Pacific. A critter we've known about since 2016 but still never been able to describe and formally name because nobody has collected one yet. They also captured the first ever footage of a live Promachoteuthis squid, a genus so rare we only know of the 3 species based on specimens collected in the late 1800s. We've only ever been able to study the genus based on dead individuals retrieved from nets until now. The expedition lasted 28 days and spanned 10 seamounts in the international waters of the Nazca Ridge, an underwater mountain chain that's currently under consideration for designation as a marine protected area. It was led by Schmidt Ocean Institute in partnership with Ocean Census and the Center for Coastal and Ocean Mapping/Joint Hydrographic Center at the University of New Hampshire. The seamounts of the southeastern Pacific host remarkable biological diversity, with species found nowhere else to date, said Prof. Alex David Rogers, Science Director of Ocean Census, in a statement emailed to IFL Science. The work our taxonomists have conducted aboard Fokker 2, supported by Schmidt Ocean Institute team, will significantly enhance our understanding of the distribution of remarkable life forms on these underwater mountains, including several that have never before been mapped or seen by human eyes. The previously unknown underwater mountain uncovered during the expedition sits at 3,109 meters, 1.9 miles, tall and is home to a thriving deep-sea ecosystem. Onboard mapping technologies jotted down the lay of the land, while the underwater robot ROV Sebastian went noodling around sponge gardens and ancient corals to see what they could find. One of the most remarkable finds during the expedition included an ancient coral garden about the size of 3 tennis courts. Multiple expeditions have journeyed to the ridge, but across the 10 seamounts explored on this one, they collected 20 potential new to science species. Upon concluding our 3rd expedition to the region, we've explored around 25 seamounts on the Nazca and Salis Ygme ridges, added CO Chief Scientist and Schmidt Ocean Institute Marine Technician, Tom Erketter. Our findings highlight the remarkable diversity of these ecosystems, while simultaneously revealing the gaps in our understanding of how the seamount ecosystems are interconnected. We hope the data gathered from these expeditions will help inform future policies, safeguarding these pristine environments for future generations. At times, we may find ourselves uncomfortable, wearing a jacket yet feeling too hot, or too chilly without one. Sportswear solves this problem by using fabrics that can adjust to temperature, but wouldn't it be fantastic if we could manage our clothing's temperature? University of California, Irvine researchers have now invented a way to manufacture a material that can adjust its temperature. The new material allows for airflow, can be easily cleaned, and even be incorporated into various flexible fabrics. It's designed to keep you comfortable in any weather. Interestingly, this new fabric material draws inspiration from the impressive color-changing properties of squid skin. Squid skin is complex, consisting of multiple layers that work together to manipulate light and change the animal's overall coloration and patterning, said Alan Gorodetsky, the study author. Gorodetsky added, some of the layers contain organs called chromatophores, which transition between expanded and contracted states, upon muscle action, to change how the skin transmits and reflects visible light. This bio-inspired composite material works based on the infrared spectrum the same way thermal cameras function. When people's body temperature rises, they give off some of their heat as invisible infrared radiation. The clothing is designed to regulate its temperature based on the wearer's body heat. Particularly, it is equipped with thermoregulatory features that can be manipulated. These features allow the material to change its properties in response to the detected infrared radiation. By adjusting its properties, the clothing can effectively control the wearer's temperature. The material is composed of a polymer base covered with tiny copper islands. When the material is stretched, these copper islands are separated from each other. This change in the arrangement of the copper islands affects how the material interacts with infrared light and adjusts its thermal properties. The team improved their composite material by making it washable, breathable, and suitable for integration into fabrics. To achieve this, they added a thin film for washability, perforated the material for breathability, and attached it to a mesh for fabric integration. The modified material allowed for the passage of air and water vapor, similar to cotton fabrics. Our advanced composite material now opens opportunities for most wearable applications but may be particularly suited for cold weather clothing like ski jackets, thermal socks, insulated gloves, and winter hats, said Gorodetsky. The strategies used for endowing our materials with breathability, washability, and fabric compatibility could be translated to several other types of wearable systems, such as washable organic electronics, stretchable e-textiles, and energy-harvesting triboelectric materials, said Gorodetsky. Bizarre deep-sea creatures known as comb jellies can fuse together when they are injured, creating a single massive individual with permanently combined nervous systems and stomachs, a new study reveals. This unusual adaptation has never been seen before in any other species, researchers say. The researchers discovered the fused jellies by accident in the lab. I was very excited when I found them, study lead author Kei Yakura, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Exeter in the UK, and Japan's National Institutes of Natural Sciences in Okazaki, told Life Science in an email. I immediately took the fused comb jellies from the room where I was keeping them and showed them to the other lab members. Comb jellies, also known as ctenophores, are a group of more than 100 species of gelatinous, blob-like creatures with small, comb-like tentacles. These alien-looking animals, which appear similar to jellyfish, create luminous displays in the deep sea by lighting up specialized cells throughout their translucent bodies. They are often considered some of the most bizarre creatures in the deep sea and are believed to be one of humanity's most ancient ancestors. In the new study, published October 7 in the journal Current Biology, researchers describe how they were carrying out routine research on warty comb jellies, Nemiopsis lydii, also known as sea walnuts, when they discovered that one of their test subjects was missing from a tank in their laboratory. The team then noticed that one of the remaining jellies was unusually large. And upon closer inspection, they realized it was actually two intertwined individuals with no apparent separation between them. The researchers suspected that this fusion was a previously unknown adaptation triggered by both animals sustaining injuries. To prove this, they attempted to replicate the fusion process by removing small sections of the bodies from 20 individuals and pairing them up near each other, and 9 of the pairs successfully fused together. The researchers considered the induced injuries minor compared to those they might get in the wild. Researchers tested how fused comb jellies' nervous systems worked by poking them on different parts of their conjoined bodies. The pair's nerve cells had synced across their bodies after just a few hours of being properly merged. The injured jellies merged quickly, often fully combining within 24 hours of being put together. Within 2 hours of fully fusing their bodies, the pairs were also demonstrating that their nervous systems had fully synced up by reacting to stimuli, such as being poked by researchers, across their entire shared body. This rapid neural integration is most likely the result of the jelly's unique nerve cells, which connect to one another unlike any other animal's neurons. The researchers also fed the fused jellies fluorescent shrimp to test if their stomachs had also merged. Food ingested by one of the jelly's mouths could be seen moving across both stomachs, suggesting that this was the case. While the fused creatures acted as one, they aren't a single organism because they have separate DNA and they cannot pass their unique morphology on to the next generation, Yakura said. However, watching the fused individuals swim, they truly appear as if they are functioning as a single organism, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to think of them that way, he said. The researchers frequently refer to fused individuals as single entities in the new paper. Researchers say that injured comb jellies would rarely get close enough to one another to fuse in the wild. The researchers think this is the first known case of any organisms being able to fuse together in this way. So far, there have been no reports of this type of fusion in other species, Yakura said. The behavior has likely gone unnoticed among comb jellies because it is probably extremely rare in the wild, Yakura added. Injured individuals must be in close proximity to one another for the merging to happen, which is much less likely in the deep sea, he added. This species of comb jelly can also recover from injuries by regenerating lost body parts and by reversing the aging process, which makes fusing with other individuals less important. Most of the fused pairs were still alive after 3 weeks when the study ended because of a lack of funding. However, Yakura suspects the fused jellies could have survived much longer. He also speculated that more than 2 injured individuals could fuse, though the team hasn't tested that yet. The researchers are now preparing to start a similar study on individuals from another comb jelly species, Balinopsis mikado, to see if they are also capable of fusing. A lorry trailer has been lifted free after getting stuck in a single-track lane in a Cornish village. The complete lorry got stuck in a single-track lane at Fordere, near Saltash in Cornwall, on Monday after taking a wrong turn. It was carrying 40 tons of seed, which had been removed. The lorry cab was driven away and a crane was brought in to lift the 8-ton lorry trailer while road diversions were in place. About 30 homes in the village had their power switched off as the operation started. Dow G. Smith, of Max Alver's plant hire, was the driver tasked with the lift on Wednesday morning. He said, "Once it's up and in a horizontal position, it's straight up and a straight lift." Villager Marion Bale watched the operation. She said, "It's so close to the house that when they lift it up they've got to be incredibly skilled to get it from bashing into the house. There's only about a foot between and the house, which is probably not absolutely perpendicular, being old." The operation was similar to another in November 2007 when another lorry got stuck in the same spot. Resident Derek Pilgrim, who was there at that time, said the electric was switched off then too because overhead lines were in the area. Scientists have designed a new form of insulin that can automatically switch itself on and off depending on glucose levels in the blood. In animals, this smart insulin reduced high blood sugar concentrations effectively while preventing levels from dropping too low. For people with diabetes, controlling blood sugar levels is a crucial but demanding task. Insulin keeps blood glucose in check, helping to prevent the many long-term complications associated with high blood sugar, such as cardiovascular disease, chronic kidney disease, stroke, and blindness. A large proportion of the estimated 422 million people with diabetes worldwide require insulin injections. But excess insulin can cause blood sugar levels to dip too low, a condition called hypoglycemia, putting people at risk of serious complications, such as loss of consciousness, seizures, and even death. Even mild or moderate hypoglycemia can cause anxiety, weakness, and confusion. People with diabetes, particularly those with type 1 diabetes, who always need to inject insulin, can have drops in blood glucose concentrations several times a week, says Michael Weiss, a biochemist and physician at Indiana University in Indianapolis. It really impairs quality of life. For decades, researchers have been working to develop a system that can automatically adjust insulin activity based on the amount of glucose in a person's blood. One common approach has been to make a compound containing deposits that release insulin when glucose concentrations rise. But a key disadvantage of this method is its irreversibility. Once insulin is released, it can't be reined in. The latest study, published today in Nature, gets around this issue by modifying insulin itself using glucose-sensitive components. Rita Slaby, a principal scientist at pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk in Bagsværd, Denmark, and her colleagues engineered an insulin molecule with a switch that turns its activity on and off in response to glucose levels in the blood. This switch consists of two parts: a ring-shaped structure known as a macrocycle and a glucoside, a molecule derived from glucose. When blood glucose concentrations are low, the glucoside binds to the ring, keeping the insulin in a closed, inactive state. But when glucose levels in the blood rise, the sugar displaces the glucoside and changes the shape of the insulin so that it is turned on. The researchers tested the insulin molecule, which they named NNC2215, in pigs and rats that had received infusions of glucose to mimic the effects of diabetes. They found that NNC2215 was as good as normal human insulin at lowering blood glucose when injected into the animals, and that it was able to prevent the drop in blood glucose levels that occurred with current insulin treatment. This a very good study that was well designed. They did all the necessary experiments to validate that this works, says David Sachs, a clinical chemist at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. It certainly provides encouragement that this approach is worth pursuing. The modified insulin is the first shown to target glucose, says Sachs. Weiss and his colleagues have previously demonstrated that an insulin molecule with a similar kind of molecular switch was sensitive to another sugar molecule, fructose 2. A few questions remain about the latest molecule. For one, the study looked at the activity of NNC2215 in a wider range of blood glucose levels than is typically seen in people with diabetes, so future studies should demonstrate that the insulin can also be effective in a narrow range, Sachs says. Other considerations include the safety and price tag of this molecule, notes Zhen Gu, a biomedical engineer at Zhejiang University in Hangzhou, China. Gu's team is also designing a glucose-sensitive insulin molecule 3. A spokesperson for Novo Nordisk says that although this study is proof of the principle of NNC2215 glucose-sensitive insulin properties, further research to optimize the molecule is ongoing. 3. Peaceful parent, cheerful child. Mom. All my class friends share that their parents yell at them for skipping lectures at college. You don't? He hops onto my lap, placing his arms around my neck. My son is now 17 and the journey that I shall share began 4 years ago. This is an opportunity for me to take you through this memorable journey of peaceful, power-packed parenting. Not so long ago I was an obsessed parent with my world, thoughts, and actions revolving only around a limited parenting role. All my social media posts and blogs revolved around parenting, the child's emotional journey and me, so to speak, a single parent, and building my world around the child's academic performance. Lockdown was a gift in disguise. It brought us all inward, compelling us to look inward, since all brakes were applied to outside distractions that are used to evade looking at our inner selves, one-on-one confrontations with the person we see in the mirror each morning. For me too, these times turned a new leaf. The child stopped connecting with school, did not enjoy online teaching and assignments, and became rebellious and defiant. I stopped, and let life guide me toward turning inward. Life was sending me subtle signals, just like when I sit crooked on the chair I feel back or muscle ache. Here too, some formula I was using wasn't working, and it was time for some checking and changing. During those days, a friend connected me to a spiritual university and the work began. I began the inward journey, the journey of discovery or rebirth. What am I when not in the parent role? How long can I continue to identify myself with the parent label? Am I using the parent role to enhance my own image in the outside world, or with subtle expectations that I will be judged, praised, and validated on the basis of the child's academic performance? 90% grades child equals super parent. 35% grade scoring child equals unworthy parent. How long and which yardstick will measure my worth, and for how long? I adopted the SOS tool: stop, observe, stir. Definitely something was inappropriate within me, which is why situations and circumstances on the outside were reflecting the distortion. The parent ego had to be dealt with. It was time for the perfect parent to switch over to the student side and follow coaching the self. All that affected me about the child, wouldn't affect another parent or colleague. This meant that it was me who needed to be fixed, not the child. He says he doesn't like studies. What is wrong with that? I began the inward journey. Is it appropriate for me to expect everyone to like bitter gourd cooked with sweet coconut just because it happens to be one of my personal favorite dishes? I began to realize the thinking patterns that the mind has formed, the belief systems that are now posing to be roadblocks in my moving forward. My very own thoughts were building walls instead of bridges between me and others. I began serious spiritual study. It fascinated and continues to intrigue me. Who exactly am I when not the parent, when not the joint manager, when not the best friend, when not the perfect daughter? Let me move beyond these seemingly elusive roles and meet the original, real me. The real me today is loving but assertive. I can love the child for who he is without judging, without resistance. The conversation between mother and son at the beginning of this essay is based on the bond, not bondage, between parent and child. All parents yell at their children for bunking lectures. Mom, you don't? Well, will yelling at you bring good grades? What is our goal, beta? He thinks for a while, but there will be parents meeting and you will be called. What will you say? He asks. I have done my task of paying fees up to date and providing basic necessities, books, and all resources required to support your education. I leave for the office at 9 a.m. and return around 6 p.m. Your lectures are during the afternoon. It's for you to work out how and when to go, and how to plan and schedule studies. I am always available in case you need me, and you know that. Beyond this there is nothing I can do. This is exactly what I will share if called to college. Besides, your intentions to bunk lectures aren't to waste time, go to movies or hang around campus. I am aware of that. Yes, you do like returning home to play with the guys downstairs around the neighborhood, which is all right so long as a delicate balance between study and play can be struck. Introspection, solitude, and self-study have brought up thought patterns that I can see and transform through awareness. While walking, if we fall into a ditch, it teaches us to make a detour and reach the destination nevertheless, doesn't it? It doesn't teach us to stop exploring just because there is a child. There are reasons for me to keep the journey going. Because of situations and circumstances, I am compelled to stop, observe, stir. What is the situation or person trying to convey? How is it playing the role of supporting me in building inner strength and resilience? Had there been no opportunities in the form of challenges, I'd have become a couch potato, lethargic, and lazy, with no reason to accelerate personal growth, no reason to mature beyond who I am. In September 2024, a big heartfelt gratitude to challenges and storms that nudged me to look within and transform. God has not promised skies always blue, flower-strewn pathways all our life through. God has not promised sun without rain, joy without sorrow, peace without pain. APJ Abdul Kalam, Wings of Fire, Pyle Jethra. For love hurts or heals. It is said everything is planned. In more than one way, for which I believe and stand. I loved, you bullied. I forgave, you played. I was shocked. I was dismayed. I was honest, I was pure. You felt the same, I was so sure. I believed you in spite of all your wrong deeds. Then and now, only your unconditional love and trust are what my heart needs. Your actions and your deeds have hurt me, shattered me. From this hurt and pain, I yearn to completely break free. I overlooked your faults, I accept. Experience is what I gained, still it pains. And meeting you, yes. I regret. I am crestfallen, yet I want to stand tall. Love, mostly hurts, still, again I will fall. Purnisabdi, 5 Ramadan and Bakrid. Celebrating faith, sacrifice, and gratitude. Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, is a sacred period of fasting, reflection, and spiritual growth for Muslims worldwide. The significance of fasting. During Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset, abstaining from food and drink. This practice aims to develop self-control, empathy for the less fortunate, and a stronger connection with Allah. Spiritual practices. In addition to fasting, Muslims increase their nightly prayers, Taraweeh, Quran recitation, acts of charity, devotional activities. The impact of Ramadan. Ramadan is a time for Muslims to develop self-discipline and willpower, strengthen their faith and connection with Allah, cultivate compassion and empathy, seek forgiveness and spiritual renewal. Iftar and Suhoor. 2 essential meals accompany Ramadan fasting. Iftar. Breaking the fast after sunset. Suhoor. Pre-dawn meal before fasting begins. Conclusion of Ramadan. Ramadan culminates in Eid al-Fitr, a joyous celebration marked by special prayers, traditional dishes, family reunions, and acts of charity. Beyond Ramadan. The joyous celebration of Bakrid. Bakrid, also known as Eid al-Adha or Bakra Eid, is a significant Islamic festival celebrated worldwide with great fervor and devotion, observed on the 10th day of Dhul al-Hijjah. Origins and significance. The festival commemorates the willingness of Prophet Abraham, to sacrifice his beloved son, Ishmael, as an act of obedience to Allah's command. Traditions and customs. During Bakrid, Muslims engage in various customs and rituals. 1. Qurbani, sacrifice. 2. Namazi Eid. 3. Charity. 4. Family gatherings. 5. Reflection and self-introspection. A shared message. Both Ramadan and Bakrid serve as poignant reminders of faith, compassion, and generosity. As Muslims celebrate these joyous occasions, they reaffirm their commitment to the values of Prophet Ibrahim and strive for self-improvement, fostering a sense of global community and understanding. Firdos. 6. Get moving, get healthy. Exercise is a physical or mental activity designed to keep the body and mind healthy and fit. It is an essential component of a disciplined lifestyle promoting good health and fitness. It can benefit all, regardless of age, gender, size, or shape. Immediate benefits. It sharpens thinking, learning, and judgment skills. It may reduce the risk of developing anxiety and depression. Long-term benefits. 1. Maintains body weight. May even reduce it. 2. Helps prevent type 2 diabetes. 3. Makes bones and muscles strong. 4. Lowers risk of heart disease and stroke. 5. Improves ability to carry out daily activities. 6. Improves balance and reduces falls. 7. Manage chronic health conditions and disabilities. 8. Reduces risk of serious outcomes of infectious diseases. 9. Reduces chances of developing several common cancers. 10. Promotes longer life. Dr. Eric Berg DC, a specialist, has this to say. The more fitness you have in your reserve, the more you can counter stress and the more flexibility you can have with your eating plan. The benefits of walking just 2 to 2.5 hours a week can lower your mortality rate by 20%. Exercising just 11 minutes a day can lower your mortality rate by 10%. Doing 3 to 4 short bouts of intense exercise can lower your mortality rate by 40%. 11 bouts of short, intense exercise may lower the risk of cardiovascular disease by 65% and cancer by 49%. A 10 to 59-minute workout once a week, every week, can decrease your mortality rate by 18%. Exercise even supports the mitochondria and helps balance healthy blood sugar levels. Going for a walk after eating may help burn any carbohydrates you eat. But it's also important to find a form of exercise you enjoy so you won't procrastinate doing it. Setting a timer and breaking up your day with scheduled small bursts of exercise may be extremely beneficial for your health. A heart rate variability device is a useful tool to help you figure out your fitness level, when you should and shouldn't exercise, and how long you should exercise. Using a sauna, intermittent fasting, and getting out in nature may also help increase your longevity. The visible effects of exercising include increased flexibility and muscular strength, endurance, and enhanced cardiovascular status. Do the type of exercise in accordance with the desired effect? Walking briskly, cycling, and swimming are examples of activities aimed to enhance cardiovascular status. One should exercise in keeping with one's physical capacity. If there is fatigue, it indicates overdoing. Exercise should be at a comfortable pace with a brief rest pause between two movements. No breath holding is advised. The movement should be within the anatomical, natural range of movement of the joints. Ballet dancers develop arthritis of the ankle because they dance standing on their toes, which is an unnatural way of bearing body weight. The best time to exercise is at dawn, on an empty stomach, for 40 to 45 minutes, and to be done at least 5 to 6 days in a week. Breakfast should follow after about 30 minutes. Views do vary, but the benefits cannot be denied. Routine physical activities at home or the workplace are not exercised even though they may be stressful, strained or tiring. They are not a substitute for exercise. Exercising is refreshing and energizing. It is addictive and a desirable addiction at that. By incorporating physical activity into our daily lives, we can unlock our full potential and live healthier, happier lives. Dr. Vinaya Bal, physiotherapist. 7. Passenger to pilot. Shortly before noon on May 10, 2022, the Cessna Caravan, bound from Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas to Fort Pierce, FLA, was cruising comfortably at 12,000 feet. The plane's airspeed was good 180 knots and Fort Pierce was just 30 minutes away. The weather that morning was spectacular, so clear, crisp, and sun-drenched that Ken Allen, the 64-year-old pilot, took out his phone to record video from the cockpit window. All these years on, being airborne over the Atlantic could still take his breath away. There were two others aboard the turboprop aircraft, a model of the plane known for its rugged durability and one that could hold as many as 14 passengers at maximum capacity. The Caravan aircraft reads its online promotional material and delivers the rare combination of high performance, low operating costs and the ability to adapt to a wide variety of missions. Russ Frank, Allen's lifelong pal along for the picturesque flight, sat in the other cockpit seat. Frank was not a pilot himself, and over the years had declined Allen's occasional offers to briefly take control when he was flying in Allen's much smaller private plane. He'd only been in the Caravan once before, and so he was good company, not much more. That said, Frank had complete trust in Allen. His friend was careful, organized, meticulous, the obsessive, protective sort who insisted absolutely no one but he washes his car. The kind of guy you want to be your pilot, Frank said. Darren Harrison was the other passenger, seated in the second row of seats on the right side of the plane. Alan had been enlisted to fly Harrison and others down to Marsh Harbor and back to do some sport fishing. Harrison had caught a couple of fish dolphins, but none of the blue marlins he was hoping for. Harrison that morning was also taking pictures with his phone, though not of the view out the cockpit. He was taking shots of the inside of the plane. He wanted his pregnant wife Brittany to be reassured the plane was big and comfortable, safe for her to fly in. Maybe they'd work in an adventure in the 3 months left before the baby was due. In a fishing shirt and shorts, Harrison took a photo of his feet in flip-flops propped on the facing, spacious seat in front of him. There was good reason for Brittany to be anxious about taking risks. She and Darren had struggled for a long time to get pregnant after their wedding in 2018. An initial round of in vitro fertilization efforts had failed, too. But the second swing at in vitro, as Darren liked to say, produced a home run, a healthy, developing girl. Brittany wasn't interested in taking unnecessary chances. Harrison, then, had not told Brittany about a brief hiccup that had happened on the flight to Marsh Harbor days earlier. There were half a dozen folks on the plane that Thursday: Harrison, Alan, as well as Harrison's friend Philip Weichert and his wife and child. Weichert was the plane's owner. His grandfather had been General Douglas MacArthur's personal pilot and would be fishing along with Harrison. Weichert was a licensed private pilot, but only what's called instrument rated, and he was always looking to get more flight hours under his belt. Alan, serving as an instructor, was overseeing Weichert's approach to landing at Marsh Harbor. Alan had to caution Weichert. The plane was coming in hot. "Watch your airspeed, Philip," Alan said into his headset. Harrison, who had never flown himself, or been very intrigued about trying, liked to wear one of the extra headsets during flights. He got a kick out of listening to the chatter. "Hey, stupid question," Harrison said through his headset. "We're in a fucking airplane. Why do we need to watch our speed? There are no damn cops." Airspeed, of course, was everything in flying, making it both possible in the first place, and often dangerous in the end. Fly too slow, and you risked stalling, and falling out of the sky. Flying too fast carried its own deadly perils. What's the worst that can happen if you go too fast? Harrison again pressed Alan. "We rip our wings off," Alan answered, "and we are a lawn dart." On May 10, at 11:48 a.m. On a safe and gorgeous day to fly, the Cessna Caravan, Flight No. N333LD was directed to drop from 12,000 feet to 10,000. The Florida coastline would be coming up soon. Bobby Morgan, a veteran air traffic controller at Palm Beach International Airport, was not supposed to work on Tuesday, May 10. But a colleague had called Monday night. His kid was sick. Could Morgan take his shift the next day? Sure, Morgan said. It meant overtime pay for him. And so Morgan reported the next morning for his 8-hour tour 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 in the afternoon. He read the weather reports, which called for clear skies. There were, however, gusty winds, approaching 30 miles per hour, and as a result, the airport's runways had been set up so that planes would land or take off going from west to east. Morgan, who was 20 before he ever traveled on a commercial airliner, loved being in the air and as a young man got his pilot's license and a degree from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, graduating in 2001, just months before 9/11. The terrorist attacks convulsed the airline industry, and pilot jobs would prove hard to come by. Morgan began to consider work as an air traffic controller, a job he'd once promised himself he'd never do. He was stocking shelves at a Publix supermarket, after all, no time for being terribly picky. The working conditions for air traffic controllers were notoriously fraught and unrelenting. Staring at radar screens in small, dark rooms, the everyday stakes were literally life and death. Of course, there were satisfactions, to maintaining order, keeping people safe. The pilots are the drivers, Morgan was fond of saying. We are the cops. If his dreams of becoming a commercial pilot were dashed by 9/11s, Morgan nonetheless was determined to fly. He got his license and was in the air as often as he could be. It's like a runner's high, he said of the rush of flying. The only thing that stops you is money. In his first months as an air traffic controller, Morgan was sent to Greensboro, NC, the aim being to get his legs under him at a smaller airport. One day early on, he also got an introduction to the limits of the job. A family of 3 in a private plane was struggling to land in heavy cloud cover. Officials at the airport knew Morgan was a pilot. They thought he might be able to coach the family down. The autopilot on the plane had failed, and the father at the controls was just not capable of flying in the dense clouds. There were clouds as low as 200 feet, circumstances that would have challenged the most seasoned pilots. Morgan couldn't help much. The plane ran out of gas and crashed. They're yelling as they're going down, Morgan recalled of the family. No one survived. Morgan later on got certified as an instructor, paid to teach others how to conquer both fear and cockiness. Inexperienced pilots, he said, tend to rush failing to check the weather or if an airport runways are closed. He said they often like to kick the tires, jump in and go. And so to those he was teaching, Morgan would preach his simple gospel. Do your homework, don't take chances, be conservative. It wasn't a bad blueprint for work as an air traffic controller. Not that it had ever fully settled Morgan's daily dose of nerves. You always feel like you're missing something, Morgan confessed. If I put somebody out on the runway, I'm just always looking around. Is somebody going to land on top of this plane? It might surprise or even frighten some people, he said, but air traffic controllers make mistakes all the time. Even the best, he said. By 11:30 a.m. on May 10, Morgan was 4 hours into his shift, halfway through a day he had not expected to work. The routine at Palm Beach International was to work an hour, then get a half-hour break. There was a courtyard outside the control room. It was called the prison yard, but in truth, there were patio chairs, even a hammock. It was comfortable enough. Morgan took a seat, kicked his shoes off, and cracked open a book. A Federal Aviation Administration handbook on flying float planes, aircraft capable of landing on water. 8 I am not dying today. Ken Allen, who lived in Lake Wales, FLA, was flying the Cessna Caravan first to Fort Pierce because everyone had to clear customs before heading home. He and Frank would fly the rest of the way to Lake Wales. Darren would be off to his home in Lakeland, armed with his photos of the plane's interior. Allen had been flying for more than 3 decades, and he'd always been happy sometimes for free, for a modest fee to shuttle people up and down the state and to the Caribbean, folks looking to hunt, fish, vacation, get to a business meeting. He owned a couple of planes himself, and he and his wife of 32 years would make their own share of trips to her family in Alabama or to their vacation home in the Florida Keys, a 6-hour trip in the car cut to 90 minutes in the air. Allen was a Florida boy through and through. His parents, high school sweethearts, had worked together at Weeki Wachee Springs, one of Florida's earliest tourist attractions, his mother one of the performing mermaids. His dad wound up in the oil business, and Allen would follow him, though it was not a straight route. He'd first spent 7 years as a paramedic, responding to fires and accidents, delivering babies, saving lives, and, once, standing silently over the ruins of a small plane crash. You see a lot of people at their worst. Suicides, drownings, a fender bender that snaps someone's neck, he said. But you also find out quickly how tough the human body is. I've seen people be in motorcycles or other wrecks that you would not think they could survive. And yet they walk away. Alan, who did not start flying until he was in his late 20s, had managed to keep himself safe in the air. Controlling the plane had come instinctively. What his early training had provided most importantly was what not to do to get yourself in trouble. Not that he'd dodged trouble altogether. Once, flying with his wife, the fuel pump failed, and Alan had to navigate his way 200 miles to safety. His closest brush with true disaster involved a landing when his engine failed and he barely avoided, well, becoming a lawn dart. Rolled to a stop and sat there for about 5 minutes, hands shaking, he remembered of his landing. It scared me to death. By 11:50 on May 10, Alan had completed his descent to 10,000 feet. Minutes later, at 11:58, Alan suddenly told the others he didn't feel great. He reached for his breakfast bar and a drink. Maybe he was dehydrated. Frank doubted Alan was making a joke. When he saw Alan's forced, seemingly frozen half-smile, he knew he wasn't. Panicked, Frank managed to say, "Stay with us, Ken." Harrison, though, concluded Alan was already outgone. Alan, in slumping to his left, inadvertently turned off the autopilot switch. This is fixing to be good, Harrison thought to himself. Then another thought, not today. I ain't dying today. With that, Harrison, having kicked off his flip-flops, was out of his seat and scrambling barefoot toward the cockpit. The plane had gone into a steep right-hand dive. The Cessna Caravan's maximum speed was 190 knots. Anything faster could result in structural damage, and with it, catastrophe. Falling hundreds of feet a second, the Cessna's speed hit 295 knots. Harrison could feel the force of the dive on his face. It seemed as if it was blowing his cheeks back. When he reached Alan, he looked out the cockpit windshield. All he saw was water. Alan was not slumped forward but to the side. From behind the pilot's seat, Harrison reached over and grabbed the yoke. Frank had a yoke in front of him in the right cockpit seat, and he grabbed it. Harrison could be good in a crisis. He'd been in a car with his parents, returning from closing on his first home, when they came upon a man on the side of the road trapped underneath a Dixie Chopper commercial mower. Harrison's father had just had surgery, and so he would be of little help. Harrison and his mother wound up rescuing the man, managing to lift the mower off him. A life flight helicopter took the man to the hospital, and he survived. Harrison, who spent much of his boyhood on a four-wheeler, would prove good at working with machines. He handled all the repair work for the equipment in his first company, a lawn care outfit. He was adept with the hand tools needed to lay the floor when he went to work for his dad's home interior company. My dad would always kid me, tell me I could literally jump on any piece of equipment and figure it out, he said. And I was like, I mean, it's not that hard. It's just a couple of controls and a steering wheel and gas pedal. The mentality I've always had is that everything operates the same. Now, reaching over a potentially dead man, and speeding to a crash in the ocean, Harrison did what he could. He remembered Alan's talk of wings breaking off. He actually wasn't sure the plane's wings were still on. But if he had any hope, he quickly calculated, he'd have to pull the plane out of its dive, slowly level off, or come close. Flatten out, he said, even if we're still going down. The plane had fallen 3,500 feet before the harrowing descent ended. We're in deep shit, Frank recalled, thinking. I'm going to have to fly this plane because I doubt if Darren knows that much about it. Any chance required getting Alan out of the pilot's seat. Harrison would do it, but he needed Frank to steer the plane for as long as it took. The plane had recovered some altitude, climbing from 6,500 feet to 8,000. Harrison told Frank to calm down, to pull himself together. "We are going to be okay," he told him. "So just get that in your head," Harrison commanded. "I'm going to need you to help me." "Can you do that?" "Yeah," Frank responded. "I think I can." Alan was not a particularly big man, but he was, unconscious, at least 160 pounds of dead weight. Harrison managed to get Alan out of the pilot's seat and laid him on the floor of the plane behind the cockpit. The front of Alan's shirt had ripped open, and Harrison was startled by what he saw. A black and blue blot the size of a softball on Alan's chest. He wasn't sure what to make of it, but it scared the hell out of him. "I thought his heart might have exploded," Harrison said. Once in the pilot's seat, not much seemed to go right. Harrison didn't know what button to push to talk into the headset. Frank showed him, but the headset still didn't work. In moving Alan, the pilot's headset had been torn from the outlet, shredding the plug. 2 of the 3 digital dashboard screens had gone black. Harrison had managed to put on another headset, but Frank had to move the mouthpiece into place from the top of Harrison's head. At one point, Harrison reached over and gently pulled Frank's hands from the right-hand yoke. The 2 men, in trying to pull the plane out of the dive, were fighting each other. Harrison dismissed any notion of trying to fly back to Marsh Harbor. On the long-shot chance Alan's life could be saved, Harrison guessed, he stood a better chance at a Florida hospital. Florida, of course, was to the west. But which way was that? Not that he knew it, but the plane had come out of its dive flying south, away from Ft. Pierce. Harrison's racing mind lit up with a memory. Harrison had always been struck by the fact that even in the 21st century with all its advanced planes and sophisticated equipment, you could always find a basic compass on an airplane. He'd even see them in the cabins of commercial airlines. "I always laughed," he said, "with all the electronics that are on that thing, why do you have a compass?" Harrison looked around the cockpit, and there it was amid all the other gauges and meters and gadgets in the front of the plane. He turned the plane right and flew west. It was 12:01 p.m., 3 minutes since Alan had gone unconscious. Trying to reach the Florida coast, Harrison flew for 12 minutes. Even with working headsets, Harrison and Frank struggled to figure out channels or frequencies to talk on. At last, Harrison managed to connect with controllers at Fort Pierce. He gave them the basics. The pilot was out. He didn't know how to fly. Harrison was soon turned over to controllers at Palm Beach International. The plane had climbed as high as 9,500 feet, nearly the altitude it had been at prior to the harrowing dive, and reached 187 knots, very close to the maximum safe speed. At 12:12, now flying at 7,500 feet, the plane was 15 miles from the coast when Frank was able to make out the coastline. Harrison did, too. No passenger has ever landed a commercial airliner in cases where the pilot or flight crew has become ill or incapable of flying. In 2005, a flight attendant who had been a student pilot tried to land a Helios Airways 737 after the entire flight crew had become incapacitated. The plane ran out of fuel and all 121 aboard died when it crashed in Greece. With smaller planes, there have been a handful of episodes that did not turn tragic. Max Sylvester, a flight student in Australia, landed a 2-seat Cessna during his very first lesson after the pilot instructor next to him fell ill. Sylvester first called his girlfriend, then had to hold the pilot's head up so he would not choke on the blood suddenly coming from his mouth, and after 4 practice tries, he landed the plane safely. I hope they don't think I'm paying for this class, he joked with the air traffic controller. 6 years earlier, in 2013, John Wilde, 65, was the passenger in a two-seat plane that took off in northeast England. The pilot, a close friend, said he didn't feel well. His head fell back like he was looking at the ceiling, widely recalled at the time. His eyes were open, he had no pulse, and he was a bit clammy on the face when I tried to touch him. I recognized straight away that he was dead. Wilde put the plane down successfully as night fell after a helicopter had been put in the air to help guide him. Afterwards I bought a logbook and put an hour and 10 minutes in it, he wrote in a first-person account. I did my first solo, first formation flying, and first night landing all on my first trip. Not a bad start. Patrick Smith, the respected aviation expert and author who has run the Ask the Pilot website for years, said there is of course no real formula for survival in such moments, but 3 things help make success possible. A passenger with an instinctive knack for keeping the plane level, for not making the understandable, even irresistible mistake of controlling. Good weather. And somebody who can talk you down. Oh, Smith added, there's a 4th. Luck. There were 16 people in the house in Delray Beach, FLA, where Nishant Patel was raised. His Indian family, his father's 3 brothers, and the men's 4 wives had moved there from England. The brothers had lost their father when they were young, and with him went any aspirations for higher education or advanced degrees. If they were going to make it, the brothers would stick together. They would be self-starters, entrepreneurs in their minds. Mom and pop convenience stores would be the gateway businesses, and South Florida seemed like a dream place to make a go of it. Just grunt work. Work hard to get where you want to go, Patel said of his family. The 16 folks under one roof included a grandmother and 7 kids. It was chaotic. You didn't have much privacy, Patel said. But there was always someone around if you needed help. I felt like I had 4 sets of parents. Patel, the oldest of the 7 children, pushed hard to lead the way. No one in the immigrant amalgam in Delray Beach had graduated from college. And he studied hard, went to Johns Hopkins, got a degree in the history of science, technology and medicine. He went on to 5 years of medical school at Hopkins, and emerged ready for a career as a thoracic surgeon. Speed and precision, calm and confidence, organization and teamwork, he loved all of what heart surgery required. I mean, you have to be fast, he said, because the length of the operation is directly tied to the outcome of the patient. Patel's first case without another surgeon across the operating table from him went well, although the night before had not. He didn't sleep for a second. Rehearsing the steps, writing them down, exactly what I'm going to say, exactly what I'm going to do, how I'm going to ask for things, he recalled. Years later, now with 3 kids of his own, Patel opted to return from Baltimore to the sprawling family brood in South Florida, taking a staff position at Palm Beach Gardens Medical Center. He was there shortly after noon on May 10, 2022, finishing up a case. The procedure was a success. But he had slept much that night before either. It's an exhilarating and grueling specialty. I always tell patients there are only 2 surgeons that don't has complications, Patel said. Those who don't operate, and those who lie. Idiots flying a plane. Bobby Morgan got the intercom page towards the end of his break in the courtyard at Palm Beach International. Bobby, come to the radar room immediately. Morgan, shoes off, book in hand, first thought it was a prank. The staff was capable of harmless goofing off to manage the day stress, although it mostly happened on weekends when there were fewer supervisors. And so he put his shoes on and was walking through the break room inside when he passed a colleague. I wouldn't go in there if I were you, he was told. Morgan went in. The radar room is roughly 300 square feet. There are 9 radar scopes, 5 on one wall, 4 on the other. It's kept dark, though not quite as dark as a movie theater. Can't be bumping into things. There's a supervisor's desk in the center. Here's the situation, the supervisor on duty began. There are 2 passengers on board. The pilot's incapacitated, and they can't wake him up. He's unresponsive and the passengers are flying the plane. Morgan quickly asked what kind of plane it was. The supervisor told him, and said so far the passengers had been doing okay. But since Morgan was also a pilot and flight instructor, the supervisor said, he was the best candidate to rescue them. We'd like you to try to help him land the plane somewhere, the supervisor said. Morgan's first reaction was reluctance. Why does it have to be me? He asked himself. There were no better options. And not a ton of luck. The only reliable way to communicate with the plane was with an emergency radio, an old-school, handheld, walkie-talkie type device attached to a wall above the radar scopes. The radio, a Motorola PET-2000, had a nickname, the Mercy Radio. Morgan got through to Harrison. The supervisor was thrilled. Morgan was flummoxed. Well, I don't know what to say, he told the supervisor. Morgan made it up as he went. The first thing he relayed to Harrison was that they would try to get him to the nearest airport. It was a small facility in Boca Raton, right on the water. But Morgan had no idea if Harrison was at all familiar with Florida. Morgan did know it was important to keep talking, to be present even if it was telling Harrison simple things he might have already figured out. The situation was hairy enough. Loneliness would be no help. Morgan fought to limit the use of jargon, ingrained in him as it was. He told Harrison the Boca Raton Airport, 7 miles off, would be seen at 11 o'clock on a clock face. The approaching landscape was full of peril. I-95, the Florida Turnpike, dense residential communities, the swamps of the Everglades. All would be miserable places to crash. I don't have any instruments, Harrison told Morgan. Can you help me turn them back on? Morgan was struck by Harrison's calm. He didn't seem intimidated by trying to make sense of, and maybe use of, the flying tools in the plane. The problem was Morgan had never flown in a Cessna Caravan. He had maybe an hour and a half of flying in a vaguely similar plane. He certainly had no idea how the instruments and displays and controls were arrayed in the cockpit. There were people standing around Morgan in the center. One of the managers sent someone to Google an image of the Caravan's cockpit and control panels. It was printed out and brought to Morgan. Ingenious perhaps. But it was an older model of the plane. An order went out to get back on Google, and eventually, a printout of the right model was given to Morgan. He kept both images in front of him. The older printout was clearer, if slightly inaccurate. Morgan's sudden command of what Harrison was seeing, where the throttle was and how to use it, and what information was on the lone working screen meant the world. It was comforting to have him there to say, "Hey, down here, there's a red handle, do this, do that," Harrison said. He was spot on. Frank, meanwhile, was concerned for his dear, maybe dead friend. He could reach one of Alan's feet. Alan liked to fly barefoot from where he sat. He occasionally shook it for a sign of life. There was none. Any calm Morgan felt with the right printout in front of him and his pep talks with Harrison going well was upended by his realization that trying to land at the Boca Raton Airport was not going to work. It was May, still a busy season for vacationers and snowbirds in South Florida. There was only one runway, and one taxiway, and the control tower sat in the middle of it all. No room for error. "Hey, change of plans," Morgan told Harrison. They would land at Palm Beach International, where Morgan was. Huge runaways. Better emergency equipment. Good idea, Harrison managed. At 12:22, the plane, flying at 5,200 feet, crossed the coastline. Morgan would have to get Harrison turned north. Flying straight and level was one thing. Managing a turn as a first-time pilot was another. Turning is something that can get the plane out of control, Morgan said. If you turn too much and you don't correct, the plane will keep turning and it'll kind of start a dive if you don't pull back on the controls. So I just said, I want you to start a slow turn to the right. Keep the coast on your right. You'll see the interstate. Follow the roads. Now headed north, Morgan coached Harrison down to 4,000 feet and told him to look at the horizon. He should be able to see the runway at Palm Beach International. Morgan said. It's 10,000 feet long, almost 2 miles. It's the biggest runway on the coast of Florida, Morgan said. There's no way you can miss it. Yeah, I think I see it, Harrison said. Frank saw it with wonder. It looks beautiful from where we are, he remembers thinking. The Cessna Caravan was a sturdy plane. It was designed and built to handle landing on rough runways in places like the Bahamas. In theory, landing on a giant runway at a world-class airport would not be a problem. Morgan, though, was worried about some TV antenna towers that Harrison might hit if he descended too quickly. He had Harrison maintain his altitude and fly by the airport on a first pass. He then directed him to do a 270-degree turn and land on a second pass. Of course, Morgan did not need to tell Harrison that controlling the plane's speed during the final descent and landing would be critical. A plane's flaps, when deployed, can help with that. Morgan used the printout to direct Harrison on how to engage the flaps. Morgan tried to tell Harrison what to expect. When you put flaps down, it changes the shape of the wings so the plane will want to balloon up, Morgan said. I told him, as you put these flaps down, you're gonna have to put a lot of pressure on the controls forward because the plane's going to want to climb. Climb too suddenly and the plane could stall. Lawn dart. Harrison put the flaps down and was spooked. To him, working hard to push the plane's nose down risked starting a dive. I've already done that route today, Harrison thought. I was like, Bobby, I don't like it, man. It's doing something squirrely. I don't know if something else broke on the airplane. I don't know what's going on. He tried it once more. The same mortifying result. Is it possible to land this thing without flaps? Harrison asked. It was, Morgan said, but there would be worry about coming in too fast. All right, no flaps, Harrison declared. I ain't doing that shit again. The plane was over I-95, and Frank was glad those in their cars did not know what was going on. You're looking down and you're thinking, this people don't know what the hell is going on up here, you know, idiots flying a plane, Frank said. Not only could we take ourselves out, we could take out other people. How do I stop this thing? Harrison, barefoot and in shorts, was carrying baggage his improvised flying partner Frank could not have known about. His wife Brittany's sister Summer had lost her husband to a heart attack when she was 6 months pregnant with their child. That's exactly how far along Brittany was in her pregnancy. Darren and Brittany had seen firsthand the lasting hurt and damage of such a loss. If I die, she'll be just like Summer, Harrison said of his wife. Those in the control tower at Palm Beach worked to limit the chances of Harrison dying. They halted takeoffs and arrivals and cleared the runways for Harrison and the Caravan. Emergency teams were put in place on the tarmac. The Caravan was now at 2,000 feet, its speed 136 knots. Harrison could see a tall building in the distance. His family's window and flooring company had done work for the real estate outfit that owned it. Harrison aimed for the building and felt if he got down to it but still above it safely, he'd have a good chance of landing. As long as I don't clip it, but be right above it, he said to himself, I should be able to be lined up perfectly to come in. It was 12:33. Harrison and Frank had stayed alive for 35 minutes since Alan had complained his head hurt. The plane was down to 1,650 feet, but its speed was back up to 143 knots. He's got a big runway and plenty of runway as long as he doesn't miss it, Morgan said. As long as he is not too fast. Because the faster you are, the plane will just float and it doesn't want to land. It just wants to keep flying. Harrison's final approach was unfolding as planned, but his speed was an issue. You're doing everything perfectly. I just need you to slow down, Morgan told him. I need you to take some throttle out of it. Harrison told Frank to pull the throttle back. If we fall out of the sky at this point, it doesn't matter, Harrison thought to himself. We're not that high. Might blow the gear off, but we'll be fine. Frank did as he was told. The plane was at 740 feet, 130 knots. Morgan told Harrison that once he reached a certain altitude, the plane would disappear from his radar screen. Morgan would still be able to talk to Harrison, but he would not see what was happening with the plane. As you get in real close, the runway is gonna get wider, Morgan said. Then, the plane was off the radar. 10, maybe 15 seconds passed. It was 12:35, and the plane was going 115 knots. I'm on the runway, Harrison announced. How do I stop this thing? Thrilled, Morgan told Harrison to run his bare feet up to the very top of the rudder pedals. Then just push down on them, he said. Simple enough, given all he had done. The plane came to a halt. There was joy in the radar room. The pilots in planes on the tarmac expressed amazement. And then there was laughter. Do you want me to park this thing? Harrison asked. Just turn off the engine, he was told. Harrison had once owned an airboat, one that used an airplane engine. He figured out how to kill the engine on his own. When the motor stopped is when I finally lost it, Harrison said. It was pretty intense. Frank noticed Harrison's demeanor change. I looked over and his hands were shaking. That was the first time that I could see that he was human, Frank said. Otherwise, he was like this robot, this machine. The machine said a long, stream of consciousness prayer. I'm telling you, Frank said, it just flowed non-stop. Harrison thought about calling his wife but held off. The last part of his prayer had been for Ken Allen. Allen had started to come to, but he was fighting the emergency personnel's effort to get him out of the plane. He thought the plane was still in the air, and that someone was trying to throw him out of it. The EMS folks got Allen into a vehicle, went 300 yards and placed him in another ambulance to get to St. Mary's Medical Center, the closest hospital to the airport. Nishant Patel never fully made it out of his surgical scrubs from that morning's procedure when he got the call around 1 p.m. Ken Allen had been seen at St. Mary's, taken into the emergency room to be treated for what everyone suspected was a stroke. The good news is you didn't have a stroke, one of the doctors told Allen. But there was some not great news, too. Allen was found to have what is called an aortic dissection, not a complete rupture of the aorta, but a tearing of its layers. It's a condition whose outcome is directly connected to the speed with which it is diagnosed, and how quickly surgery is performed. The condition had a 98% mortality rate if untreated for a week. It was unclear how long the tear in Alan's aorta had been present. St. Mary's, anyway, was not the place for the required surgery, and while it would inject a delay into the situation, St. Mary's doctors wanted to send Alan 6 miles away to Palm Beach Gardens. They had Patel's phone number. On a day of options good and bad, Patel was the best, and he just so happened to be on duty, if a little tired from his earlier surgery. Lights and sirens, Patel told St. Mary's, meaning Alan needed to be rushed to him. A helicopter if available. Alan went by ambulance, and Patel saw him in the emergency room at Palm Beach Gardens. He was alarmed to discover Alan had what's called a malperfusion. Patel said it helps to imagine the aorta as a pipe with branches coming off it to the kidneys, the liver, and the brain. The branch to Alan's brain was compromised. Alan had been able to speak to his wife via FaceTime while at St. Mary's. He told her he loved her and was headed to serious surgery with a 50-50 chance of survival. She got on the phone to his friends in Lake Wales. One of them would fly her to Palm Beach. Frank had been able to join Alan and Patel at Palm Beach Gardens. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, Patel said of Frank. Frank did manage to tell Alan some of the details of the rare feat he and Harrison had pulled off. "I'm proud of you," Alan whispered. Frank teared up. "You know, what we did was incredible," he told Patel. "But it won't be a good day unless you save his life." Alan, fighting a powerful sleepiness, wasn't full of confidence. "I knew I was probably going to die," Alan said. "But honest to God, I was not scared. I wasn't weeping or crying." Survival, Patel knew, was only part of it. He wondered how badly Alan's brain had been injured. Was it still being injured as he was prepped for surgery? Are we gonna get recover neurological function, or is Ken gonna have this devastating neurological injury for the rest of his life? Patel said. By the time Alan was in the operating room, it had been 3 hours since he landed. Patel had ordered his team to suit up again. Patel's own daughter had undergone serious heart surgery, and the experience made him commit to communicating with patients with both candor and great care. "I was very honest about our chances of getting him through, but then reassured him that he was at the right place to get it done," Patel said. Patel likes to operate in a room kept as cold as possible. "The thermostat," he said, "wouldn't allow him to go below 50 degrees. As for Alan, he was about to get cold, too." Patel and his team initiated what's called hypothermic circulatory arrest. Alan's head was packed in ice. A heart-lung machine, used so that the heart could be operated on, pumped cold blood throughout the body. Alan's body temperature would be reduced to 18 degrees Celsius. The procedure took 9 hours, though the most critical work of replacing the damaged segment of the aorta with a polyester fabric had to be completed in one 60-minute stretch. "You're just chopping that piece of pipe out," Patel said, "and putting in a new piece of piping." Once done, Alan's body temperature would be returned to normal. He was sewn up. Alan would spend 6 days in the intensive care unit. But he'd wake up, be able to move his limbs. Neurological damage, if any, was minimal. Upon discharge, Patel gave Alan a final briefing. "No restrictions in your life going forward. Do anything you want. You'll know what you can do as you heal up," he said. "You know, if you want to have a bourbon, go drink a bourbon. Even fly a plane." Epilogue. More than 2 years later, Ken Alan still doesn't believe what happened, what the two men in the plane and a third in an operating room gown pulled off. "I don't understand it," he said of the entire episode. "We all three should be dead, right? I mean, honest to God, we all three should be dead." Amazed and haunted, he pored over the flight data, mapped the route, and listened to what little communications were recorded. The data don't lie. Darren and Russ did it. In order to continue flying, the Federal Aviation Administration made Alan take multiple physical, neurological, and cognitive functional tests. His effort to regain his clearance to fly would take 17 months and involve being seen by 6 doctors. He's back to flying all the time now, including the very same Cessna Caravan. And he has had a few bourbons. In the days after Alan's surgery, Nishant Patel did a news conference relating some of what happened. He even got to enjoy a quirky moment of celebrity after he operated on Alan, something he'd never recounted publicly. A man had been diagnosed with an aortic dissection and was set to be treated at a hospital about 10 miles from Palm Beach Gardens. The man's wife wasn't comfortable. "Where is the pilot doctor? Is he here?" she asked the staff. Told he wasn't, the man and his wife asked to be transferred to Palm Beach Gardens, where Patel was in surgery. "I finished up my bypass surgery, ended up doing his operation," Patel said of the man. "He did fine." Frank, for his part, said he got asked so often about the flight by family and friends that he chose to write up an account for the members of his church in Lake Wales. "People ask me if we panicked and my answer is we didn't have time," he wrote. He then added, "Now comes the God part." Frank wrote that both he and Harrison had felt a presence in the cockpit, a force keeping their heads clear. He wrote that the feeling for him was so powerful that he felt in direct contact with his God. Frank then added a line about Harrison, one he wrote with gratitude and something like grace. "I am convinced that God has plans for that boy." Harrison, it turns out, had always had plans to try and check out an airport control tower. After Ken Allen was off to the hospital, he got his chance. Airport personnel arranged for Harrison to get access to the tower, and once inside, he made it to the top, where there were computer screens and windows. "Pretty amazing what you just did," one of the men in the tower said. "Man, I was just trying to stay alive," Harrison said back to him. "No, I don't think you realize what you just did," the worker insisted. And then he pointed at the top right corner of one of the computer screens. "There, the number 27 shown. The runway that you landed on, there was a 27-mile-an-hour crosswind when you landed," he said. "Doing that is unheard of in that airplane." Harrison also got to meet Bobby Morgan. It was quite a moment. They took pictures. Morgan wanted to ask a million questions of Harrison. "But I didn't," he said. "I knew what he had been through." Morgan was given the rest of the afternoon off. The next day, he did what he loved to do, he went flying. Harrison's friends rallied to get him home quickly. Brittany, his wife, had dropped her phone in shock when Harrison had told her what had happened. The friends could get a plane to him, he was told. "Dudes," he told them, "I'm just going to rent a car." There were some local news accounts about the passenger landing a plane, though Harrison said he had no interest in talking with reporters. He did do a spot with his wife Brittany on the Today Show. And then he went back to his job with Sunshine Interiors in Lakeland. Brittany gave birth to a healthy girl, Mary Margaret. Harrison's pals joked he was some kind of guardian angel. Joe Sexton, 9. The weirdest island in the world. Have you heard of Isla Madre de Dios, God's Mother Island? Let us get the first thing out of the way. The island is almost completely made of white marble. That alone is weird enough. But it gets more interesting. Isla Madre de Dios is located in the south of Chile, Madre de Dios Island, and it is very hard to access. The fjords in the area are treacherous and famous for being difficult to navigate. Furthermore, most of the coast of the island coast are steep cliffs, with very few places to access the island. The island is also constantly bathed with winds up to 130 km per hour. It has been estimated that the conditions currently existing on Isla Madre de Dios are equivalent to what was around the world some 12,000 years ago, when the last ice age was still around. To make things even more interesting, Isla Madre de Dios has huge caves underneath it. Now, these caves go deep, very deep. Some expeditions have descended some 350 meters under the earth, with chasms of 60 meters deep. Okay, you may be asking what is the big deal? There are other places with caves like this, and even deeper. And here is where it gets really interesting. The island was inhabited. There is evidence, dating up to 4,500 years ago, revealing that Isla Madre de Dios was inhabited by the Cosquer, which was an indigenous tribe who lived in the south part of Chile. Keep in mind that these cave paintings were found at the bottom of the caves, so the Cosquer had to go down the 60 chasms with Stone Age technology. So, to wrap it up, we're talking about an island made of white marble. Almost inaccessible with today's technology. Constantly hit with winds of up to 130 km per hour. Riddled with deep, deep caves. Which was inhabited, several thousand years ago, by people with Stone Age technology. Now that is what I call weird and fascinating. 10MJ News July-September 2024. Mitra Jyothi participated in NAB Karnataka's Train the Trainers program, focusing on equipping Panchayat officials with the knowledge to educate village librarians on creating beacon libraries accessible to the visually impaired. Our team highlighted the crucial role of accessible libraries and offered guidance on setting them up by providing resources like Braille books and audiobooks. This initiative marks a significant step toward ensuring that everyone, regardless of visual ability, has access to the wealth of knowledge that libraries offer. Mitra Jyothi in collaboration with Alimco conducted an assessment camp under the ADIP scheme of Government of India, to prescribe aids and appliances as per the eligibility criteria, on proper assessment and verification of mandatory documents for individuals with intellectual disabilities, hearing impairment and visual impairment at Mitra Jyothi, HSR layout premises on 15th, 16th and July 17, 2024. The devices were distributed to 257 beneficiaries on Thursday, August 29, 2024 at Haryana Bhawan, Bengaluru. On July 20, 2024, Mitra Jyothi welcomed the Siemens EDA team for a fun-filled day of music and joy. Their captivating group and solo performances filled our space with energy, and our students enthusiastically joined in with their own singing and dancing. After a delicious lunch, we engaged in meaningful conversations about empowering lives and volunteering opportunities at Mitra Jyothi. On July 30, 2024, Advocate Amar Jain, a corporate lawyer, certified professional on web accessibility, 2019 to 2022, and co-founder, Mission Accessibility visited Mitra Jyothi and engaged with our digital literacy program participants. Being visually impaired himself, the experience was both enriching and inspiring for our students. On August 3, 2024, Mitra Jyothi had the pleasure of hosting the Accenture team for a day filled with games, laughter, and meaningful connections. Our students enthusiastically participated in the activities, making the most of the time spent with the Accenture team. Beyond the fun and games, we also engaged in insightful discussions about empowering lives and exploring volunteering opportunities at Mitra Jyothi. Mitra Jyothi is happy to announce that Halion has once again partnered with Mitra Jyothi as part of its CSR activities in India, with a long-term vision to enhance the employability of our beneficiaries over a 6-month period. On August 10, 2024, the Halion team conducted an inspiring session for our students at Mitra Jyothi. The session's main focus was on resume building and mock interviews, equipping our students with the skills and confidence needed to succeed in the workplace. The interactive format encouraged active participation, with the Halion team inviting students to share their interests and address their queries in detail. This is an ongoing program till 31 December. Mitra Jyothi welcomed over 140 third-year MBBS students from the Department of Community Health, St. John's Medical College, Bengaluru. From August 20 to 23, students and professors received an in-depth orientation on our work and an important sensitization session on treating persons with disabilities, PWDs. Through this initiative, the future doctors were made aware to approach PWDs with respect, kindness, and empathy. They were encouraged to explain each step during physical examinations, ensuring patients feel comfortable and prepared. On September 7, Mitra Jyothi welcomed Lord Ganesha into our midst with hearts full of joy and devotion. Our celebration was graced by the presence of Ms. Madhu Singhal, our wonderful staff, students, and well-wishers from around the world. The festivities began with a traditional puja, invoking blessings and divine guidance. Our talented students filled the air with beautiful bhajans and the chanting of the Ganesha Stotram, creating an atmosphere brimming with spirituality and positivity. A special shout out to Krishna Uncle for treating everyone to a mouth-watering in-house feast. The next 3 days were filled with love, laughter, and togetherness. On September 9, we bid farewell to Lord Ganesha with a heartfelt Visarjan. 11 Recipe: custard apple and chia seed pudding. Ingredients: 1 cup custard apple pulp, 1 cup coconut milk or almond milk, 4 tablespoons chia seeds, 1 tablespoon honey or maple syrup, 5 fresh fruits for topping, optional. Instructions: 1. In a bowl, mix custard apple pulp, coconut milk, honey, and chia seeds. 2. Let the mixture sit for 10 minutes, then stir again to avoid clumping. 3. Refrigerate for 4 hours or overnight until the pudding sets. 4. Top with fresh fruits before serving. This recipe highlights custard apple's creamy, unique flavor, perfect for desserts and refreshing treats. 12. Radio Uddan's 8th Convention, an inclusive celebration in partnership with Mitra Jyothi. Radio Uddan, in collaboration with Mitra Jyothi, is thrilled to host its 8th annual convention on February 15 to 16, 2025, in Panchkula, Haryana. This exciting event will feature a Kavi Samlan with visually impaired poets, discussions on disability rights, an inclusive game show, and a cultural evening. The centerpiece of the convention is the Mr. and Miss Visionary Beauty Pageant, designed to celebrate the confidence, creativity, and diversity of the visually impaired community. Participants will compete in 2 categories: totally blind and low vision, vying for cash prizes of 21,000 for winners and 11,000 for runners-up. With ongoing participation, applicants can submit a 1-minute video and photos showcasing their talent. This pageant provides a unique platform for visibility and recognition for the visually impaired. What makes this year's event even more special is the participation of prominent figures from Bollywood and the disability sector, who will join the event to show their support and engage in networking opportunities. This convergence of leaders, artists, and advocates will foster dialogue, raise awareness about disability rights, and offer opportunities for collaboration across fields. Such conventions are invaluable in their impact. They not only highlight the capabilities of the visually impaired but also challenge social norms, empowering individuals and broadening the horizons of inclusivity in our society. These events strengthen the network of support for people with disabilities, allowing them to shine while gaining the resources and recognition they deserve. For more information on how to participate, visit Radio Uddan's page or contact via WhatsApp at 946-366-8196. Join us for this inspiring, inclusive celebration of talent and advocacy. 13. Celebrating abilities, the importance of Divya Kala Melas. Divya Kala Melas, organized by the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, DEPUD, under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, MSJE, are vibrant showcases of the skills and creativity of India's differently abled artisans. These fairs have been held over 20 times nationwide, providing a platform for Divyang entrepreneurs to exhibit their crafts, from textiles to handmade goods. More than just fairs, they are opportunities for economic and social empowerment. They enable disabled individuals to market their creations, gain visibility, and inspire others. Importantly, these events serve as hubs for information on government schemes, such as loans and assistive technology, allowing attendees to access resources that can transform their livelihoods. The impact of these melas goes beyond sales. They foster inclusion, dispelling societal stereotypes about disability, and emphasizing ability over limitation. Each fair is a powerful testament to the talents of differently abled individuals, demonstrating that they are integral to India's diverse fabric of creativity and entrepreneurship. For those with disabilities, keeping an eye on these melas is essential, as they offer both commercial opportunities and access to support networks that can open new doors for independence and growth. Through Divya Kala Melas, the government is creating a more equitable space, where everyone, regardless of physical ability, has a chance to shine.